Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. This is my all-new 2023 Subaru WRX. This is my first ever Japanese car I have ever purchased. I'm more of a Euro guy. But ever since this car arrived at the showroom, I have been obsessed. And in fact, the weeks leading up to this WRX arriving at the dealership, I was falling more in love with it before I even took it out for a test drive. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions from friends asking, Mike, why did you go with the most controversial WRX ever made? Because the design is very wild, especially with the plastic cladding. Also, you went with a very bright color, which was solar orange. Now, I gotta say, I actually really love the orange, and I'm so glad I opted for this color. But also, in this video, I want to go over the reasons as to why I chose a WRX, and more specifically, the Premium. Now, the WRX does have a lot of competitors in this market, but I feel the WRX is the best value for the price, and more importantly, has the best performance for the price. So without wasting any further time, let's dive right into this video and really find out why you should also buy a WRX. So to give you guys a bit of a backstory as to why I chose the Subaru WRX, especially if you are looking at buying a car under $40,000 that is brand new, I considered the Hyundai Elantra N, which is very rare to find, whether it's a manual or DSG. I've also heard going with the DSG is better compared to the manual. I considered the Honda Civic Si, but prices were very outrageous. A lot of dealers had markups of $3,500, but also I went to a CarMax, and there was an Si with only 1,000 miles on it, practically brand new. They wanted $36,000. That's more than what I walked out with the WRX, so that was definitely out of the equation. Also, I do own a Mark 7 GTI, so I was looking at a Mark 8, the last edition for the manual, but again, prices were way too high on those, just could not justify spending close to $38,000 on a car that I think isn't much better than the WRX. And then the last car that I considered for a very short period of time was a Subaru BRZ. Some of you guys know that I run a main channel where I feature brand new cars, and a Subaru dealership that I've worked with for a very long time invited me down to check out the car because the person who was going to buy it backed out last minute, and they were kind of nudging me at buying one. They knew I wanted to buy a manual car, and it was very well equipped, under $34,000, would have been a bit more affordable than the WRX, and it was going to be a great proposition because that alongside the GTI would have been a great two-car garage. But I wanted a four-door car, and I was kind of fixated on the WRX. And a lot of it is because, of course, it was a manual, but I like the fact that it was more practical with the four doors, and I had a bit more trunk space as well compared to that very small BRZ. Another motivating factor into buying the WRX came down to the fact that it's a manual. Now, I am not very proficient at driving stick. In fact, I've only been driving a manual for about 2 weeks. I learned the basics on a 1991 Honda Beat about 3 years ago, but I hadn't driven a car with a manual outside of moving one around on a lot at a dealership. And because I do feature brand new cars, or just cars in general, that was going to be a bit problematic that I didn't know how to drive stick, especially if I want to have more in-depth reviews. So that was really a motivational factor into me buying this car. But also, I'm getting older now. I'm 30 years old, about to turn 31. There's a lot of old cars from my childhood that are manual only that I'd love to drive, I'd love to document, I'd love to showcase, whether it's on this channel or on my main channel, that sentimentally they have a lot of value to me, and hopefully one day I get to own one, and that's why the WRX to me is a very important piece of the puzzle. Now, getting into the specifics as to why I chose the Premium over the base, we have to take a look at the outside. I love the fact that with the Premium you do get the fog lights. Now, some of you are going to say, why didn't you just go with the Limited where you get the steering responsive LED headlights? To me, that wasn't much of a motivational factor. Also, I wanted to stay below $40,000 as much as possible, and that has a base price of around $37,500, so I'd be cutting it pretty close. I felt the Premium was giving me just enough, and it gave me some features that I really wanted, and the fog lights were definitely one of them. Now, of course, you're probably going to say you could have just ordered them from Subaru and installed them yourself. Yeah, but why put in the manual effort and labor to do that when it already comes available on the Premium? While I'm taking a look at the front fascia, I do want to point out another thing too that I love about the WRX that I didn't think I was going to like when I ordered this car. I love the gloss gray accents that really provide a nice color contrast with the solar orange paint color. Now, you can go with the sport grille, which I have definitely considered and I kind of want to get. Although, because I like the gloss gray, I'm not really in a hurry to change this up, but maybe during the summer, I'll go with that sport grille. Then as we move over to the side profile, this was kind of a deciding factor as well, which was the 18-inch wheels. I really didn't like the wheels that came on the base model. And what I also like too, just like up front, the gloss gray contrasts very nicely not only with the plastic cladding along the side profile, but also the body color as well. And they look really nice for a stock wheel. Although a minor gripe that I do have about the WRX, and this is regardless of trim, is the fact that summer tires do come standard, which to me make no sense, especially since most Subaru owners live in colder regions of the US. So you're gonna be going through snow, you're gonna be taking on some of the elements. The fact that I now have to go to a tire shop and put on either all seasons or winters is one of the things I actually don't like about the WRX. Then as we make our way into the interior, it really comes down to the 11.6-inch touchscreen, which I know a lot of people don't like because there's not a lot of physical buttons. It's a bit more difficult to use, especially when you have to look over to the screen when you're driving. So it's not necessarily the safest head unit out there, but I'm very acclimated with it, having been around Subarus for about 4 years now, and it's become second nature for me. I also love the fact that I have dual zone climate control as well. But with the base model, I really don't like the dual touchscreen setup. It looks so cheap, it just does not look good, and they're really not that easy to use. So for me, the 11.6-inch touchscreen was a no-brainer. It gives me everything I want, such as Apple CarPlay. Now, I don't have the Harman Kardon premium audio system on this model, but again, it's not really something that I was looking for in the WRX. I just didn't feel like going with the optional package made a lot of sense, especially for a car that I'm mostly purchasing for the driving dynamics more so than the comfort and the features. An added bonus with the Premium, which is why I felt that this was the best value in the WRX lineup for the 2023 model, is the heated front seats. Now, okay, they're not ultra suede, they're cloth, but they do provide a lot of support, which I was genuinely surprised. Also, they're not power adjustable, but again, that's not something that I really care about, especially since my Volkswagen GTI didn't have power seats either, so I was perfectly okay with these cloth seats. I know a lot of you are going to want me to address the design of the WRX because, for one, I bought one, so obviously I must think it looks okay. But also I know a lot of you don't like the look of the VB compared to the VA, but also other generations that the WRX has offered for the past 20 years. Now, we all know that Subaru, throughout the generations, has always had controversial styling, but I think the VB takes things one step further. Now, I don't think the front fascia is really an issue for a lot of people because I think it looks more dynamic and more aggressive compared to the outgoing generation. Also, I said earlier on, the gloss gray accents actually are a nice touch to the front fascia and does provide a nice color contrast, but for some colors I can see as to why you'd want to go with the sport grille. But what about the plastic cladding along the side profile, especially for the fender flares? Now, I have looked at color matching fender flares from Aeroflow Dynamics. I've considered putting them on, but to be quite honest, living up here in New England, I think that the plastic cladding is rather useful, especially if you are going to go off-road or go in the snow. And I've already gone off-road with this car, so I've loved the fact that the plastic cladding is protecting the paint to a certain degree. I also love the side skirts as well. Now, I kind of want to go with a gloss black look over the plastic cladding here, but then that would change the entire profile of the car, and I don't know, I'm not quite ready to change things up to the exterior. But what about the rear fascia? Because I know this is really where the controversy is really centered around, especially for the bumper, because it is pretty aggressive. It might be too much for a lot of people. But I have found myself looking at this car in the garage with admiration and not like, oh, I need to change that up. I need to color match the fenders. I need to color match the rear bumper. I'm not there yet. And I think it's mostly because knowing that winter is right around the corner and knowing I'm going to need that if I'm going to go through deep snow or go off-road, which has been a bit more frequent than I really thought, I kind of like the plastic cladding. But then again, looking at what a lot of WRX owners are doing to their cars, it almost makes me consider doing the exact same, especially with the color matching rear bumper with the gloss black rear diffuser. There's a lot of options out there for sure. Then of course with the taillights, yeah, it kind of looks like a Honda Civic. But from this angle, I really love this car. I love the body lines that go over the rear fender and of course the rear wheel. To me, this car does have a very striking appearance, and it will take some time to get used to, especially if you do own an older WRX. But I think in time, people are really gonna love this car. And lastly is the driving dynamics, which is probably why a lot of you guys are here. Performance-wise, you get 271 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, which really isn't much of an upgrade over the prior generation. So if you own a VA WRX, I can see why you might not be so excited to hop into a VB. But what I have found is that it puts the power down very nicely. The accelerations are smooth and linear. And honestly, I love the transmission and the clutch. It's a very light clutch. And if you're hopping into a manual car for the first time, maybe you know the basics, you're gonna love the fact that it's very easy to get used to. I will admit that I did stall a few times on the first day that I got the car, but because it's very easy to find the bite point, I find the WRX to be perfect for new learners. Now, one thing I will say though, is that the WRX does have very light steering, which I knew walking in because it is a Japanese car, and like I said before, I am a Euro guy, so that was quite the adjustment. However, the light steering pairs very well with the suspension. This suspension is fantastic. When I'm in tighter corners on a back road, I feel like the rear end is flat. I feel like I can go a lot faster in the corners with this car than compared to the GTI. Now, of course, it is all-wheel drive, so there's a bit more weight to this car compared to a front-wheel drive hatchback. But it's a very enjoyable car to cruise in. It's a very enjoyable car to drive on a daily basis. And when you are on those back roads by yourself, you can have a lot of fun, and I can assure you, you will be smiling from ear to ear. Now, for those wondering about fuel economy in my 2 weeks of owning this car, what I've noticed is that MPG's mixed driving is around 21, 22 miles per gallon. On the highway, and if I drive very conservatively, which I'm not doing right now, I can get about 28, 29 miles per gallon. So it is somewhat economical. Now, I am paying a bit more at the pump because the fuel tank is a bit larger than in my Volkswagen GTI. However, it's all about the miles per gallon. And for those questioning about the road noise, yeah, there's a lot of it for sure. You're gonna feel every single bump, you're gonna feel every imperfection. But if you're like me and you like stiffer suspension, you like feeling planted to the road, you're gonna love this car. You're gonna love it as a daily. Your passengers might not like it, but I know you will. As a daily commuter, it's such a fun car, but also, this is only stock power. This car has not been modified, so stock suspension. The fact that this car is this much fun, this playful, but also the handling is so good, really shows the potential of this platform and what you can do with it. Now, of course, there are other Subaru owners out there, other Subaru YouTubers that have definitely put down more power on this platform and for this generation. I follow a few of them. Don't know if I'm ever gonna go to 400 horsepower with this car, but definitely gives me a lot of excitement for what this car can be in the future. And while I didn't buy this car for the performance or even the driving dynamics necessarily, because my main motivation was to drive manual, it has become one of the reasons why I have fallen in love with this car after 2 weeks of ownership, and also why I might be keeping this car a little longer than I was expecting. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the WRX. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. There's going to be a lot more content to come in the next coming weeks and months because there are some mods that I want to do, such as the interior lighting, the F1 light, maybe the sport grille, and of course, those vertical LED lights that go next to fog lights. There's a really good mix of OEM parts and aftermarket stuff that I really want to do to this car. Should be fun. I'm really looking forward to my time owning this car. So far, I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully if you are on the fence, this video helps you, guide you in that direction, because I do think, just from a price standpoint, forget about all the other things that maybe I have talked about throughout this video. From a price standpoint, at around $35,000 for a brand new car with a manual transmission, I just don't think there's a lot of other cool cars out there that really matches what the WRX gives you. But maybe you're going to find out that the GTI better suits you, or the Elantra N. But I do think and I hope that you do choose the WRX, because as somebody who likes European cars, the WRX has really impressed me so far. So guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.